Great. So I'm here this afternoon with Bill Coulam, and Bill is my guest. This is Todd Trichler, and I just wanted to first congratulate Bill for being selected as a finalist in the PL SQL category for our recent Oracle Database Developer Choice Awards. Bill, just even being selected as a finalist is first you're nominated by the community, and then you have to pass a panel of peers and experts in that area, along with Oracle database developers that actually say, okay, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. And then I looked at your profile and I'm like, well, he might actually do that, because you're one of the things that I saw was you're a guest speaker at the University of Utah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
That is just because of a past president of the Utah Oracle Users Group that we have here. She is an adjunct professor at the University of Utah, and she was aware that I had done some data modeling. She was teaching a data modeling course and wanted to get some outside industry experience to share with her attendees. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that a couple of times.
Excellent.
Sharing some of the horror stories.
On real-world data modeling, I believe. And your experience is large telecoms. You've worked with big energy companies. Is there any great, interesting examples that you can share with us of using the database and to solve real world problems?
Sure, especially in the telecom space where we're dealing with millions, sometimes billions of records. Actually, with the energy software company I work for in Houston, they had the same problem. When you're dealing with billions of records and you've got to process those records, why ship them over the bottleneck of the network over to some middle tier, package them up, marshal them into objects, do something with them, package them back, stick them back in the database? Why don't you leave them in the database, which is the whole pull of Hadoop, do the processing right next to where the data is at. That was a key thing that allowed some of our projects in telecom to really flourish and succeed, because we were doing the processing in the database right where the data is at.
And the larger amount of data that you have to work with, the more of a pain that would become moving it across the network, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. And more of a benefit doing it in the database, you betcha.
Excellent. So I got to ask you, Chrome Dome, how did you come up with that handle for your OTN discussion when you answer questions on, okay. I was like, does he have a passion for the Google's web browser?
No, I lost my hair at 17.
I see. So you figured, let's just own it, and you answer under that handle to questions in the OTN discussion forum. The other thing that I noticed is you mentioned the UTOUG Oracle User Group, and I believe you're the chair, the Oracle Development Chair for the special interest groups there.
One of two chairs, yes.
Uh-huh. And, what does that involve in terms of, obviously the Database Developer Choice Awards was all about giving back to the community, and I'm assuming volunteering for things like that is definitely part of that. Could you explain to somebody who's maybe thinking about, hey, maybe I should do that, what's involved in something like that?
Sure, and it's something that I tell my attendees every time I give a presentation. I encourage them to look at what they're doing, the problems they're encountering, the solutions they finally came up with, and then consider sharing that with the community, either through articles, blogs, or speaking. I know most people actually fear death less than they do public speaking. That's why blogging is a great outlet as well. But I do encourage them to share, because that's how we really help each other out.
Excellent. So I did notice that you said in your profile, it said that you trained, you're currently training 50 DBAs. So now are you training them to be DBAs, or are you training them to be developers who understand what a DBA wants from them? Yeah, there's a classic dichotomy of the developer saying, he's never giving me access to everything that I want to play with. And the DBA is like, hey, we're protecting the data. We've got to make sure that everything's performant and you don't write really lousy SQL and PL SQL. What are you doing with that?
At my current employer, we have about 50 DBAs. And the vast majority of them, they're responsible mainly for keeping the database up and running. They are database administrators. mostly. Some of them do a little bit of a development. A few handfuls of us do heavy-duty development here in PL SQL, XML, and some of the other technologies that Oracle offers, like Oracle Text and so forth. I happen to run the community of practice here at my employer, expounding upon training them on development topics, in particular data modeling and PL SQL development. And just recently, I put together an 8-week course to train our DBAs here internally on how to do PL SQL right. And I turned that into a presentation I've been giving at conferences as well. But it was mainly for the dozen or so DBAs who really expressed a deep desire to know PL SQL better, or who felt like they had no knowledge whatsoever. They needed a 101 course. So it was built for them.
So you kind of did an intro 101 starter course, and then also a higher level to get the guys that already were on their way a little deeper knowledge, yeah?
That's correct. The first half is to get those who did not know PL SQL at all up to speed, and then the second half is to teach the enterprise grade best practices.
So if you were just giving advice to a young developer, he's got a smattering of SQL and he's like, well, why should I learn PL SQL? I mean, what's the benefits of that? Why would you sell him on learning that?
That is a sentiment we see, especially of our developers who come in to do UI development, usually using Java. They're not really being taught. They might have a relational database 101 class, and that's about it. And they'll come to us without any knowledge of the benefits of doing processing in the database. They feel like everything has to be brought into Java and handled that way. Of course, that is one of the benefits of improving processing by doing it in the database, but there are many others. There's abstraction and encapsulation, one of the most basic best practices that software engineers are taught. It's beautifully done using views and PL SQL APIs, protecting your data access with a PL SQL layer, as opposed to bringing it into the middle tier code where your middle tier is now exposed to all the details of that data, and it now makes it more fragile to change. That's one of the benefits. Of course, there's other performance-related things, but it's funny because as I studied for one of the presentations I gave last year, I kept seeing argument after argument on Reddit and Stack Overflow and other forums about why PL SQL is your grandpa's language, why it shouldn't be used. Well, other than one argument, they were all invalid. They just had never seen PL SQL done right before. Like some would argue that unit testing is just not possible with PL SQL. They've just never seen unit testing done right. That was just one example. The only valid argument that any of them had was that a particular firm or operation's PL SQL talent pool might be a little thin. Other than that, all the other arguments were invalid. They just never seen it done right.
That's an interesting, and that's something that could be leveled at any language or any development framework. Is it's a valid argument. If a business has invested in technology, switching to a different technology, or resources are what they are. Nobody has unlimited resources. So, but that could be true of any language. Not having the developers.
That's true.
Now, when you do your day-to-day work, what are some of the tools that you end up using and just to get stuff done? Is it just the database? You hard code it all in a text editor, any SQL or PL SQL that you want? What do you use?
It's been a long time since I've done that. And with the advent of the SQL command line that I think Jeff Smith is working on.
Jeff Smith and Chris Rice, that's really cool. SQL CL?
Let's see. It's been a long path. I used Platinum SQL Station a long time ago. I was a big fan of that. They actually came up with a debugging tool that was fantastic before Oracle even released their debug API. And then I switched to Toad. And then I switched to All-Around Automation's PL SQL Developer in 2000. I was and still am a big fan of that, but I noticed with interest the advent of Project Raptor, which eventually became SQL Developer. And I reviewed that online a couple times and kept saying it's not quite there, but I think it's there now.
Uh-huh.
And I think that any developer, especially anyone working in an environment where you have multiple laptops running Windows and Mac and so forth, that probably ought to be their first choice. Their first stop is Oracle SQL Developer. It's free, it's multi-platform, it's great.
On that note, you'll be happy to know that over 4 million developers agree with you. Because Chris told me the other day that they have over 2.5 million people downloading that free SQL Developer. So I think you're onto something there. That and the fact that one of the other guys mentioned just how good they were, that particular team, about taking ideas from the forums, because they have that SQL Developer Exchange where people can say, well, look, it doesn't do quite this functionality the way I'd like it, and they can propose an enhancement request, and the community can vote on it and mod it up and down. And Chris was actually saying that a lot of the features that they actually put in was either what they got from the SQL Developer Exchange or stuff that they needed to put in to basically handle all the work they're doing around the cloud. So.
And then for my modeling and design work, I have used many tools over the years, have done a lot of evaluations of them for clients and for employers, and for years, Embarcadero ZR Studio was the clear winner in most cases. But recently, we started using SQL Developer Data Modeler here as well. Embarcadero sat on its haunches for too long, I feel. Their UI needs a big refresh. But there's some other things as well. It's still a good tool, but when Data Modeler came out, it was a clear winner.
Oh, wow.
I used to maintain a matrix of all of the different modeling tools and our requirements they had to meet and so forth, and they were either $4,000 a seat, good tools, or free garageware. There was just nothing in between.
Nothing in between.
Now we have SQL Developer Data Modeler, which has almost all the features of the really expensive tools, and it's free. Huge. And
you're saying that it's strong enough at this point. I know they've gone through a growing stage on the data modeler side. Initially, the hardcore designer data modeling guys would like poo-poo it, and then initially I was like seeing more and more of those guys won over. And in your mind, it's basically got to the point now where even the most complex data modeling environments, from large telecom environments or energy or some of your larger scale ones that you've worked on, it'll handle that now.
Yeah, I encountered a couple bugs the last time I evaluated it, but other than those small little things, yeah, it was handling. One of my favorite features was the fact that it has a built-in repository that you can integrate with your existing source code control system and keep your changes in XML files instead of giant binary files that don't play well with SCC systems.
Yeah.
That allows you to do very small check-ins instead of 20 meg, 40 meg check-ins every time you alter the name of a column, for example.
A little bit of a performance feature when you're wanting to iterate quickly, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And have you had much experience in terms of, obviously you've, in those industries, I'm sure you've worked with a lot of different versions of the database. Are any of those industries, leading edge, they're on 12C, or is people's pretty much, last version? What's been your experience? Has it just been across the board?
I'm not currently consulting, but back when I was, most of my clients were usually not willing to be on the bleeding edge. They were willing to let everyone else find the stuff, and they'd usually adopt around the point of release too. And that is the case with my current employer as well. Mm-hmm. We currently have one of our portfolios which has upgraded to 12.102, but the rest of us, we're waiting for the enterprise team to certify it, and then we'll be upgrading sometime near the end of this year.
Okay, excellent. Yeah.
I myself have 12C on my laptop. I had to get my open source framework upgraded to work on it, and I became a big fan of some of its features I've been waiting for quite some time. Okay.
Which ones in particular strike you as really interesting?
The two that I needed immediately or have been wanting for a long time are kind of trivial to most, but I love them. One of them is the identity column, and then the other one is a flavor of invoker rights for views. It uses the clause bequeath current user.
Uh-huh.
That solved a big problem for me with my framework.
And for the developers out there, why would they want to learn those features? What functionality, what's so good about them?
Well, the case around bequeath current user for views, it's quite a rare edge case. I'm not sure a lot of developers would need to worry that much about. But if they are not aware, most of them have probably heard of invoker rights for PL SQL packages, where the caller of the PL SQL routine, not the owner of the PL SQL package, the security and naming resolution and so forth it's transferred to the caller, not the owner. That's fantastic for example, my open source framework, in that you can install it in one schema, and then you can have multiple other application schemas in that database consume it. So you only have one copy of it instead of, say, 10. That's a great use of invoker rights. Problem is I had some views in my framework that needed to coordinate and be in sync with how the packages saw things, and I couldn't because those views were not able to utilize invoker rights. Well, with 12c's bequeath current user, they're now able to mimic basically that functionality, and I was able to get rid of some workarounds.
Excellent.
I had to use after logon triggers in order to get around that problem. But anyway, with this feature, I don't need that hack anymore. And then, of course, the identity column is just really nice because sequences in the past, yes, you could name them to match the table that the sequence was meant to be used for, but sometimes developers or, say, DBAs who preceded you did not do that. And there wasn't any clear way in the data dictionary to tie a sequence to the table that it was meant to support. And in a really large environment like what I'm used to, with thousands of tables and hundreds of PL SQL packages, it's kind of hard to manage all those dribbles running around, if you're familiar with the Star Trek metaphor. Yeah. multiply, and then you don't know who owns them and what they're doing and whether they're even being used anymore. Anyway, so it's just really nice with 12c's identity column to be able to have a sequence that's clearly tied to a column and a table, surrogate key that's meant to generate numbers for.
Makes it a little cleaner for developing, huh?
Yeah. It's something other databases have had for a long time. I'm glad Oracle finally has it.
Nice. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Happens to the best of it.
How did you get to it? I mean, did you always want to be a PL SQL developer? Was that your goal in life when you were a youngster? How did you get to where you are now?
I was a gigantic nerd when I was younger. Got involved when personal computers first started coming out. Really enjoyed learning BASIC and so forth. I went to 1 year of college, and at that time I was still thinking computers. I went on a mission for my church for 2 years where I spoke the Spanish language and decided I just loved other cultures. When I came back, I decided that I already had Spanish down, I was going to learn another one, looked around a long time, and ended up settling on Arabic. That was my major, liberal arts, Near Eastern studies. I thought for sure I'd be working with the government. In fact, I was my professor's research assistant, and I had some interesting people visit his office who couldn't tell me who they worked for. They said, don't worry, when you get done here, we'll contact you. Yeah. But this was pre-internet. This was 1993, and 38 letters to the government resulted in no job offers. So I was humbled. Luckily, I was doing computer work for my professor while I was going to school, and ended up applying to Anderson Consulting out in the Bay Area right around graduation. And luckily, they had opened their doors to liberal arts majors for a few years, and that allowed me to get my foot in the door and learn how to work with really large systems, and found that I thoroughly enjoyed computer work, and especially organizing things, finding homes for things, designing tables and putting data in them and getting them out. Turns out that every project I was on, from the first engagement with Anderson Consulting till I left and started doing work for employers, every project was on Oracle. And every project needed custom development in PL SQL, and so that ended up getting picked for me over time. And then, of course, because I was decent at it, that's what I kept getting hired to do. So PL SQL became the the way to provide for my family.
Nice. It's always good to have a good way to provide for the family, especially if you enjoy doing it. Excellent. So, Bill, thank you so much just for your time, and thanks for the contributions. And I believe you contributed your PL SQL framework as an open source project. What license is that under?
I think it's LGPL, but I'm not a legal expert. I had no idea. I just picked the one that felt like the most open for people to take it and run with it. Nice.
Well, thanks for all your contributions, and keep up the good work. And again, congratulations on being selected as a finalist in the PL SQL category for the Devvies.
Thank you.
Excellent.